Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining my webinar today on transnational delivery. My name is Rima Ibrahim. I'm the Education Manager at NIAS Australia. We'll be starting the workshop very soon. In the meantime, please mute your function until the group discussion starts. The duration of this webinar is 60 minutes, and this webinar is being recorded. You will receive a link to your certificate at the end. Within 24 hours, please make sure you check your junk box, and this webinar is equivalent to 2 CPD points. So we'll be starting in a couple of minutes. All right, so welcome to our webinar today again on transnational delivery. Before we start our webinar, I would like to make an acknowledgement of country. NIAS Australia would like to acknowledge the traditional owners, the Cammeraygal, the Gadigal and the Bidjigal people of the Eora Nation on whose land NIAS meets, works, studies and teaches. We pay our respect to elders past and present and extend our respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people from all nations of the land. In this webinar, we will present a definition of transnational delivery. We will also explore NIAS Quality Area M, transnational delivery with Denver Craig, one of our NIAS quality assessors, who will also present the stages for NIAS quality endorsement of transnational delivery. We will look at some challenges that centres need to consider before delivering transnationally, and we will explore how Area M relates to Area H, online delivery of the NIAS Quality Assurance Framework. So before we start the webinar, I would like to know a little bit about you. So we're going to start this poll, and I want you to select the sentence that best describes you. I have taught offshore students online. I have only taught face-to-face students. I have managed the transnational delivery of programs. I'm a manager at an overseas ELT centre that is running a transnational ELT program, or I am new to all of this. Again, please select the sentence that best describes you. All right, I can see that we have a variety. So we have some that have taught offshore students online. We have a couple that have only taught face-to-face. We have many attendees who have managed the transnational delivery of programs. And we have some managers at overseas ELT centres that are running transnational deliveries. And we have some that are new to all of this. So in today's webinar, we've got a variety of audience, which is great. Okay, I would like you also to choose one of these questions and keep it in mind during the webinar. I want you to reflect back on these questions, on the question that you've chosen by the end of the webinar. So why is transnational delivery important? How can I ensure the quality of transnational delivery? And how can NIAS Quality Assurance Framework guide centres through the quality management of transnational delivery? Again, I want you to select only one question that you would really like to hear the answer to, and keep it in mind throughout this webinar. Okay. So let's define transnational delivery. So transnational delivery, it is not a new concept it's a concept that has been around for decades, but we have been using this term more often as a consequence of the pandemic and the need to resort to online delivery, which is one of the types of transnational delivery. So if we look at a definition from 2002, according to the National Union of Students in Europe, transnational education can take 3 forms. People mobility-based education, where a person can go abroad for educational purposes. An example of this type of transnational delivery is students arriving on shore Australia to study here. The second type is program mobility-based education, where an educational program can go abroad. An example of this is an Australian program, such as an EAP program, delivered overseas by overseas teachers while being moderated by an Australian-based college, or a course taught online by teachers in Australia while the students are located in different countries. This is a common trend during the pandemic. The third type is institution mobility-based education, where an institution or provider can go or invest abroad for educational purposes. An example of some Australian institutions that have opened campuses overseas are RMIT Vietnam and Wollongong University in Dubai. So if we think about in an ELT Australian context and we think about transnational delivery, we know that Australian ELT providers have been partnering with offshore providers for decades. The transnational arrangement between Australian and offshore providers include delivering programs through distant learning, the online mode that we've been using during the pandemic. There's teacher and student exchange, and of course, opening offshore campuses. So if we think about the benefits of transnational education for institutions, we find that transnational partnerships are a sustainable way for providers to grow and compete on an international level, as well as develop a greater understanding of the cultural context of their international partners. As for students, transnational delivery is a cost-effective way for students to build their English language competencies whilst being able to stay close to their families and their support network. This releases the pressure of needing to adapt to life in a new country while studying the language. We also see students becoming more accustomed to the teaching and learning culture delivered by the Pathway Institution, assisting them to adapt to both the target language and teaching methodologies. And for students who are studying part of their course at home and then coming to Australia, by the time these students arrive on shore, they will have an English language proficiency level and some cultural knowledge that allows them to adapt and improve their communication abilities in Australia and with Australians. So I want to play a recording with Denver Craig. Denver is one of our NIAS assessors. He will take us through Quality Area M, Transnational Delivery. He will also run us through the NIAS process of endorsing transnational delivery, and we'll answer some questions at the end. Please take notes while you watch this video. And if you have any questions, please add them to the Q&A session. We will address your questions at the end of this webinar.
Hello everybody, my name is Denver Craig. I'm a NIAS Quality Assessor based in Sydney. Today's session is going to be looking at what is called Area M, Transnational Delivery, one of the newer NIAS quality areas. And what we'll do today is going to look at an overview of the framework and see where transnational delivery fits in. We're going to talk about transnational delivery, and we're going to go through the actual principles and the drivers for each principle. And then we're going to go through the actual process of obtaining endorsement by NIAS on transnational delivery programs. So in this slide here, you can see the actual framework. This is the NIAS quality framework, and you can see at the center of everything is the student experience. The student experience is looked at through teaching and learning and assessment, through promotion and student recruitment, and through admin, management, staffing, and of course resources and facilities, and strategy, risk and governance. In addition, NIAS have created a whole suite of different areas and different quality principles, including welfare for under 18s, online delivery, which is fairly new, ELT qualifications, including products and services, education agents, ELT professionals, foundation programs, and also transnational delivery. So let's talk about transnational delivery. These are the 4 new quality principles. They were developed, they were developed a couple of years ago in 2019. And we are now in a situation where we are beginning a pilot program run by NIAS, looking at transnational delivery by Australian education English language providers. So let's look at the 4 different principles. The first one is that transnational delivery is underpinned by a strong relationship between partner institutions. That means that the provider institution and the offshore delivery institution. Now, let's have a look at each of the drivers under the quality principle. First of all, it's important that the provider ensures ongoing compliance with the host country's regulatory and legislative requirements. This is really important, particularly when we're setting up transnational delivery programs for English language. Work has to be done to ensure that there is compliance with the host country's system. That may be working with different ministries of higher education or other different bodies to ensure that everything is covered and that all requirements are met. Secondly, it has to be make sure that all the details are negotiated by the partner institutions. That means that, again, you need to make sure that everything is being met to cover legislative, regulatory, and cultural requirements. This is particularly important in countries that are different culturally from where the provider is stationed. So, for example, countries that have particularly different cultural aspects, different cultural requirements to the Australian environment need to be dealt with in a particular manner to make sure that delivery is ongoing in a professional manner and that all the requirements are met in that area. Also, to keep in mind is that, for example, contracts that are set up for transnational delivery are very clear and in saying where authority and responsibility lies at all points with program management, the delivery and the promotion. In addition, it's important to make sure that procedures are in place for ongoing management of the partner relationship to keep the relationship moving along at the right pace. And in addition, there must be a very clear contract with an exit strategy in case the transnational delivery program comes to an end. It's important not to make sure that students are not disadvantaged under any circumstances. Moving on to quality principle 2, that's to make sure there are clear guidelines to control all aspects of program delivery to ensure cultural relevance and compatibility with the course providers onshore delivery. For example, students need to make sure that they have access to all the support services they need and must be suitable, of course, for the time zone that they're in, and the language and the cultural expectations and the distance from the onshore providers' institutional campuses. It's also important that students and staff have access to all the resources and facilities that are culturally appropriate and that these are comparable standard to the providers' onshore programs. We also need to make sure, particularly in this day and age, that any online components are appropriate to the IT practices of the host country. Does everything match? Does everything connect? These are important questions. In addition, it's important that the curriculum is internationalized in collaboration with local experts. There has to be a say from the local people in the institutions to make sure that the academic standards and the course outcomes are equivalent to those in the provider's institution onshore course. Interestingly, we also have to look at to make sure requirements which may be culturally unfamiliar to students are explicitly addressed in the curriculum. Now, this may include, for example, developing concepts of group projects, developing an understanding of academic integrity and plagiarism. It's important, particularly in different cultures around the world, that an understanding is agreed on in regards to what is familiar and what is not familiar to students. In addition, we have to look at comparable assessment strategies to ensure equivalent course outcomes. That means to make sure that all the assessment strategies for onshore and offshore are equivalent. We also need to look at staffing and professional development policies and procedures to ensure that management, admin staff, and teaching staff have the appropriate qualifications, experience, communication skills, and cultural awareness. When we're looking at, for example, teacher qualifications, this is an interesting point. What is the requirement for transnational delivery for online offshore qualifications for English language providers? And finally, in that section, we need to ensure that staffing and professional development policies and procedures are very similar to what we do in onshore here in Australia, and that they are made, teachers are given the opportunity and staff are given the opportunity to continue professional development at the same level. Let's now look at quality principle 3, which is systematic evaluation of all aspects of the transnational program contribute to continuous improvement. Now, this area looks at, for example, partner institutions have an established and agreed understanding of what quality entails in all aspects of the program. That there is an integrated quality management system across the partner institution. The partner institutions incorporate a range of evaluative and benchmarking practices in their documented quality review and improvement cycle. That could include, for example, longitudinal studies. It could be looking at benchmarking opportunities in the offshore country, the destination of where the courses are being delivered. It's also important to ensure that there's comprehensive student and stakeholder feedback, student-teacher feedback, and it's obtained through culturally relevant and effective strategies. So there has to be an opportunity to ensure feedback is obtained. And this may be slightly different to how we obtain feedback, for example, in Australia at the centre. It depends on what works in that system. In addition, we must make sure that the transnational delivery program meets the standards of the quality assurance framework operative in the education context of both the partner institutions. And that finally, the transnational delivery program is benchmarked against both the providers' onshore programs and the transnational delivery programs offered by other providers. So there's an opportunity for benchmarking there in regards to the programs. Finally, quality principle 4, transnational delivery program contributes to furthering global education and enhancing the reputation of Australian education. This is really interesting part because in general, the Australian providers have been very successful over the years in transnational education. A good example of that would currently be the University of Wollongong, Dubai campus, who this year are celebrating 10 years of successful delivery of English language courses, which is a fantastic achievement. And as we've seen over the past few years during the pandemic, there's been an opportunity for other providers to come on board and look at different models of transnational delivery. The program management and delivery contribute to the strengthening community relationships, including establishing good working relationships with local authorities. So this is an important partner. Partners through conferences, data sharing, and also publications. And finally, research and systematic program evaluation to leverage possibilities and innovate globally cover a range of different models in transnational delivery. As I said, during the past 2 years, we've seen the creation of a range of different models. And that's another important and successful factor with the delivery of Australian providers in offshore campuses. Centres, the range of centres that are currently delivering transnational delivery offshore they've built arrangements for different markets, for different countries and different contexts that work for them. So there's a whole range of different ways of having transnational delivery set up. Okay. So let's look at the next slide. So the quality endorsement activities of NIAS have grown quite substantially over the last few years. So of course we look at NIAS endorsed quality centres. We also now look at endorsed quality agents. And there's also opportunities to look at endorsed quality professionals. If you're interested in looking at professionals, you can go online and see what you can do to increase your knowledge base in regards to ELT professionals. And then finally, NIAS endorsed quality products and services. And again, you can see these on the NIAS website. Okay, now we're going to talk about the actual process, and this is really interesting. So this is something that NIAS has developed, as I said, over the past few years. We have a process in place. There's a pilot process being undertaken at the moment. And I thought I'd run through with you to see what the process is, and you may be interested in becoming involved in this process. So let's have a look at the beginning of the process. So first of all, a management meeting is set up with the provider offshore to discuss going through all the principles and seeing what their current alignment is to area, which is transnational education. So this meeting will take place normally with the senior managers. There'll be quite a long discussion in regards to going through all the different principles and the drivers associated with them. In addition, what happens is that the staff and the students are then surveyed with a health check. And it's a survey that takes place. The survey is aligned to the principles of Area M, transnational delivery, and it gives the students and staff an opportunity to feedback on their understanding of the current process for transnational delivery by the centre. What happens after that is a report is then delivered back to the centre, which will identify best practice by the centre and will come with also recommendations to help support the centre align to the NIAS principles for transnational education. It's really an exciting project, and there are a number of different institutions, all delivering in slightly different ways, that are coming in line with being part of the pilot program. So that's where we come up to. I think what we need to say is just finally is that, as I said, because of COVID, because of the pandemic in the last few years, a number of different models have come on board. And what we're seeing is, with the current space that we're in at the moment, is that we're seeing an opportunity for institutions to deliver in a number of ways. But it's important to consider always that the opportunity that is there always to ensure that we are advancing education by providing quality assurance services for everyone in the English language community. And that has come into play because now there's an increase in the opportunity to deliver courses to students who are unable or possibly unwilling currently to come to Australia. Rima, absolutely.
how would you describe the effect of COVID-19 on transnational delivery over the last 2-3 years?
Yes, it's an interesting question, because I mean, what happened was the same in Australia, that everyone who was delivering transnationally, so offshore centres, needed to find another way of delivering as well. So it was the same in Australia. But what it's also meant is that offshore centres created an extra opportunity by providing an opportunity whereby Australia students, international students, who were not able to come because our borders were closed, or were unwilling to travel, even now. And so there's another opportunity for Australian providers, and it's quite a big opportunity to deliver their courses offshore and attract a new market. So what will that look like in 2 years' time? I don't know. It's hard to know, but I mean, there's definitely an opportunity for an expansion of transnational education, particularly in the English language.
Thank you, Jennifer. And we have quality. So can you tell us a little bit about the importance of doing online health checks while studying, if you're a student or a teacher or an institution conducting transnational delivery?
Absolutely. Ask any NIAS assessor what the most interesting part of the assessment process is, and they'll tell you it's speaking to the students, because students often take the opportunity to talk about and to give feedback about areas that the centre may not have gathered information about exclusively. So it's really important, it's central to everything that NIAS does. And if we look at the framework, the student experience is central to the whole process. And so getting feedback from the students, and of course the teachers and the staff, is really important, because it gives us such an insight into finding out how the students are dealing with certain situations. What do they think of the model that is currently being used to deliver their course? What do they think about the resources? What do they think about the course evaluation? What do they think about their opportunity to give feedback internally to the centre? So there's a whole number of areas which give us so much information and help support the centres into creating a really positive delivery platform. So they're absolutely central to everything that NIAS does.
Thank you, Devon. My last question. If I'm an Australian ELT centre and I want to open a centre overseas, what are the main challenges?
Ooh, good question. Look, you really need to make sure that you have an excellent understanding of the culture, the country where you're going into, the politics, the finances, the social requirements. They're also important. And, you know, for Australian providers, it can be initially a bit confusing, because, for example, I've visited centres in Malaysia where I had assumed that there might be some Malaysian students there, but there are no Malaysian students in those centres. There were students from, for example, Eastern Europe or the Middle East. So there is that type of situation. In Singapore, you'll find institutions where 40% are non-Singaporean nationals, and that's fairly common. So there's a whole different range of varieties of different types of courses, and it will depend on where the centre is going to deliver the course as to what and who make up the population of the centre. So there's so much research and so much to look at before putting your toes into the world of transnational education. But NIAS is there, of course, to support you along the way. And the role of NIAS, again, is to make sure that we are advancing education by providing quality assurance service for everyone in the English language community.
Thank you, Denver, for your very informative session, and I'm sure that everybody is going to go back with a lot of information on transnational education. Okay, so thank you for...
Hello, everybody. My name is Denver Craig.
Thank you for attending to Denver's video on transnational delivery. And after watching this video, I'm pretty sure that you've got some questions. If you have any questions, please add them to the chat section, the Q&A section. So after listening to Denver and learning more about NIAS Quality Area M, let's look at some of the challenges that institutions intending to engage in transnational delivery may need to address. So if we think about compliance, you'd need to make sure you learn about the compliance in the host country. You need to take into consideration all the legislative, regulatory, the cultural requirements in the host country, and you need to have very, very clear processes and procedures in place for the ongoing relationship with the partner provider, including clear contracts to make sure that students are not disadvantaged if the relationship ends at any stage. If we think about the cultural challenges, you need to learn about the culture before you go there. You need to make sure courses are relevant to the host country's expectations. So you need to think about your course content. Is it culturally accepted by the host country? Is the curriculum internationalized? And at the same time, it should be equivalent to the curriculums that you're using in Australia when we talk about quality. So you need to balance between what the host country needs from a cultural perspective and keep it at the same equivalence as the courses that you're delivering onshore. When it comes to students and staff, you need to make sure these students have access to facilities that are culturally appropriate and are at a comparable standards to the one that you're using at your onshore college. You also need to think about the online component. Are they suitable and available in the host country? Do I need to change a lot in my course? Do I need to create a whole new course to suit the overseas cohort? And you always need to think about unfamiliar activities and make sure you make them as explicit as possible. Some students overseas don't understand what plagiarism is all about. That's when you need to look at your instructive language and make sure you address the needs of these students. Now, quality assurance can also be a bit challenging. You need to think about the rules, the regulations in the host country. You need to build an integrated quality management system across partner institutions. You need to think about benchmarking. Do you conduct your benchmarking only with offshore institutions? Are you going to have a blended benchmarking activity where you involve the college overseas and also your centres in Australia? And you also need to think about the feedback that you need to collect. It's not going to be the same as the feedback you collect or the way you collect feedback from your students and teachers and staff. You need to also think about that. You also need to establish a good working relationship with local authorities. So that's something you need to consider before you engage in any transnational delivery overseas. All right, this brings us to the relationship between transnational delivery and area quality H. And although transnational delivery relates to all areas of the NIAS quality framework, I chose area H because online delivery is one type of transnational delivery. If we think about program mobility-based education, where an educational program can go abroad. Now, if we look at the principles in area quality H, we see that the online, principle one, the online environment is designed to support a positive and engaging user experience. So some questions you might to consider: does the course conform to accessibility standards? Do the teachers maintain a presence throughout the engagement with their students? Are the learning tools accessible to these offshore students? And is the teacher interacting with these students? You also need to think about the interaction level in class. Then if you think about area quality principle H2, learning and assessment strategies are appropriate to online delivery. In an overseas country, you consider the accessibility of online assessments. You think about the learning and assessment tasks and technologies available in the host country. You might consider the instructional language is appropriate to the proficiency level of these students. And you also think about the content. Does it ensure inclusiveness? When it comes to quality principle H3, the learning resources and technology support and facilitate learning. This is where you might think about the online course. Does it work overseas? Does it work across all devices that the students are using? Do the students have devices to engage online? Do the students have the necessary technical skills and technology to complete tasks? Is there a designated officer or an IT person that can provide these students with support when they need? When it comes to air quality principle H4, courses are supported by an integrated reporting system. You need to think about the reporting system overseas. Is it comparable to the reporting system that you have onshore in Australia? Do you need to come with new technology? Is the orientation explicit? And do you have socialization activities? Which introductions to the course are you using? Does the instructor respond to these students in time, given that they're learning online and it's distant education? You also need to think about the standards, the guidelines for online interaction. Are they suitable for these students? Are they socially and culturally acceptable in the host country? And you also think about the links to relevant support services. Are you offering support services? Are the support services going to be overseas or are they in Australia? So there's a lot to think about when you're running your course online, whether it's, and especially when it's delivered to students that are currently overseas. All right, I'm going to come back to the questions at the beginning of the webinar. So why is transnational delivery important? How can I ensure the quality of transnational delivery? And how can NIAS Quality Assurance Framework guide centres through the quality management of transnational delivery? I want you just to reflect back at the question you chose at the beginning of this webinar and think about the content of the webinar, and just if you can add in the Q&A section your ideas, whether we were able to answer your question. That would be great. Okay, just a quick reminder to receive a certificate and CPD points for this webinar. But please, if you don't receive a link in your email, just go to NIAS Online, online.nias.org.au, log in or register if you do not have a NIAS Online account. You can go straight to the course within 2 days. Complete a short quiz and then you can receive your certificate. So this course will be available online within 48 hours. All right, for those who are not ELT professionals, just a quick reminder that you can become an NIAS ELT professional by registering online. ELT professionals are recognised through the Commitment to Professional Development, and they are listed on the NIAS website. And as you complete NIAS online courses, you will receive badges. If you are an associate member, that means you do not work for a NIAS endorsed centre, but you can still become a NIAS ELT professional. You'll earn this badge. If you work for a NIAS endorsed centre, you will earn the NIAS endorsed centre badge on your ELT professional listing. And once you complete a set of core courses, you will earn the NIAS core course completed badge. After completing core courses, you can start with a specialisation course, and upon completing one specialisation course, you receive the NIAS specialisation completed badge. If you take the Master Practitioner NELT course, and this is the capstone course, you will actually receive the NIAS Master Practitioner and you will qualify to become an endorsed ELT professional. So only the endorsed ELT professional badge is only for individuals who have achieved the NIAS standards for ELT professionals and completed the NIAS capstone course, Master Practitioner course. A little bit about the Master Practitioner course. It's for ELT professionals who are working, teaching, or studying in the ELT field and have gained considerable experience in applying quality assurance principles in their professional practice. It's also for you an opportunity to demonstrate and apply knowledge, skills, and experience with the NIAS Quality Assurance Framework to your ELT context. So easy to enroll, you just need to go to NIAS online, create an account, and go to ELT Professionals, create a listing, and you can start taking advantage of all of these amazing courses. Also, a quick reminder that the NIAS conference for this year is happening on the 5th and the 6th of May, and it's a blended learning conference experience. You may choose to attend the conference face-to-face, or you may choose to attend the conference online if you can't travel to Sydney, but we would love to see you all in Sydney this year. It would be an opportunity for the ELT community to come back together and to celebrate the return of students to Australia. So please, if you've got any questions, can you please put your questions in the Q&A section? And we've got some time to answer your questions. So would a hybrid class be considered transnational? I would say a hybrid class is semi-transnational because you do have students onshore, you have students overseas, and you need to accommodate both types of students. I know that onshore students or international students still, but they've got more exposure to the Australian society, to the Australian way of life, and to the way of learning in Australia. So I would say there's a special kind of attention that needs to go to students that are still studying online in a hybrid classroom. The instructional language might be a bit more elaborated, and you also need to have one-on-one sessions with these students because they're not getting all the interaction that they would receive in a face-to-face classroom. Okay. Okay, there's another question. Okay. Would be interesting to know how many NIAS members are considering TNE delivery. Thank you, Mark. We have a few centres currently completing the pilot for this type of endorsement, and we are looking forward to the results of the pilot and the best way to, and then we'll have some announcements that go in the NIAS news and some feedback on the pilot as well. Okay, any other questions? All right. Okay, so if you have no more questions, I would just thank you for attending this webinar today. And I also want to thank Demba for taking part, a very important section of the webinar. Our next webinar is Foundation Program, and it will be on the 5th of April. So I hope to see you in my next webinar, 5th of April, Foundation Program. Thank you so much for taking part for attending this webinar, and I hope you have a great day. Thank you.